society today, by and large, is missing a big piece that makes us human. And that is feeling for one another without ulterior motives. In Buddhism, there's a term that the Buddha uses. It's one of the Brahma Viharas. It is mudita. Mudita. Sometimes in English it's translated as altruistic joy, or feeling for one another. It's not sympathy. Sympathy keeps you locked in your own world and very sparingly remove pieces of yourself, or to, when the time allows, or kind of reach just a little bit here and there and touch someone else's life, whether it's you're moved enough to offer them some help, etc., or feel for them. It has when you look at it from the side, it almost looks as if it's a superior position where you're in compared to theirs, which is inferior. That is not mudita. The attitude that we hear at times, self-righteous, being self-righteous, again, morally in a very haughty, very superior, almost conceited position. That is not feeling for another. It's definitely not pity. It's definitely not, therefore, sympathy. There's an element of joy in it. There's an exuberance in it. Simply because you are touching the invisible world of someone else. They might or might not know about it, but you feel their joy. You feel their pain too, yes. You feel their sorrow. You feel their excitement. You feel their exuberance. You feel their comfort. You might be miles away on another planet or across the hall from them. You might be sitting across from them, next to them, but without necessarily saying or showing something from your side to them that you are feeling, but you do nevertheless. So it doesn't necessarily involve a physical interaction per se. Nevertheless, it's life-changing in its beauty, in its transformative qualities, in how it enriches us. So this quality is missing in the world today. It's not encouraged in schools anymore. I think it's not because we are becoming more evil or unwholesome intentionally, but the fact that we are overly occupied in our minds with other things. There's a tendency, there's an encouragement, in fact, there's a movement, there's an unspoken even rule that says you have to be hyperactive in the mind, overly busy in the mind. When in my 20s I used to be in New York City, I used to work as a designer for a company for a time period. So as I was living there in Manhattan and seeing all these incredibly large crowds moving about, it was almost like planned chaos, something like that. But there was a lifelessness that I would see every time I would look at people's faces, especially during a certain time of the day. It wasn't like that during, I would say overall, when I was first there in Christmas, around New Year's, where there was an air of lightness, an uplifted state of mind. That's not the time I'm referring to. But during a regular, work week, especially during lunchtime or beginning of a work day, I would observe, especially from the floor, that we were on, looking down from the window, I would see these huge crowds. So this would be a topic of conversation. And my colleagues would look at me funny because where is this question coming from? One question that I remember asking to one of the sales reps at this jewelry design company. And I said, what happened? Like, when did this start? This speed. Society is sped up, as if somebody is hitting the fast forward button and people are moving faster. And when you're moving faster, things are lost. So I was looking for those things that were lost. Why are they being lost? So I asked a very innocent question. I was barely 25. And he looked at me funny and he pondered for a moment, I remember, and he said, in my opinion, overnight delivery and the fax machine. I was not expecting an answer like that, so pragmatic. But I thought about his answer, and there is some truth in there, obviously. Overnight delivery and fax machine. In my teenage years, I remember I would send messages. I was just a go-between between my boss and, when I was an apprentice, and other business partners around the world. So he would give me a short message, handwritten, and I would take it to this office and I would give it to them, and this lady would sit down and type on this weird machine, and the message was immediately sent. This was long before internet, definitely before any fax machines. So I'm talking about a decade after that, and he's saying to me, the reason why life is now faster is because of these things. Overnight delivery and fax machine. Of course, there's truth to this. These are one of, or a few of the conditions that have brought about this state of affairs in the world today. Because the other thing that I used to be always curious about is this term in English, business. What is business? Because as a, learning English and all that, so I would break it down to the root words or syllables. And busyness. Sometimes we don't look at words with enough of an innocence, with an empty slate, as it were. We just take in, we just accept whatever society at large, the mainstream media or social media nowadays, whatever they spew at us, we just take it without questioning. So business What is that? Business. When you think of business, it's money, generating money, income, resources, interaction between companies, people, transfer of funds, etc. There's different definitions, but it's basically busyness. To the point where if you find yourself not being busy, you are made to feel that there's something wrong that you're engaging in. Something you're doing is wrong because you're not doing the thing that is right, which is to keep yourself busy. And this is a big problem for meditators because, especially on retreats, it really shows up. People are always engaged. They want to do something. Give me a technique. Give me a this. What's my object? What's going to be my object then? What if happened? Nothing's happening. Like I need something to happen. You have many, many, many teachers who have been encouraging the student to come up with stuff. The mind, however, has to practice something opposite of being busy. So at least on the meditation cushion, we are given the right, the space, the encouragement to not be busy. But why? Because when you are busy, you forget about the moment that is happening, that is passing you by, underneath your feet, streaming away. You're clueless. And when that's happening, that means you have no sati, you have no mindfulness at all. You're making up stuff. You're conjuring up even experiences in your mind, and then you're translating that and saying that to your teacher and to, I guess, score some points or something. It's not meditation. So busyness, business. I'm using, some people might say it's a play on words, but we have carried that into our personal, private lives. So it's no longer business left in the business world. It's no longer in Manhattan, in a busy crosswalk, an area where there's so much interaction going on. People's livelihoods are at stake. It's beyond 9 to 5. People are carrying that world into their homes, into their families, into their relationships, into especially the relationship they have with themselves, which for many people, in many aspects, it's indistinguishable from the business world. So the mind never shuts down, in a sense, from being locked in the business mode, business mentality. So when you see your loved ones, they talk to you, you see your friends, you see people you associate with outside of work, but the same gears are still functioning. Because you're too all over the place. Well, when you are too all over the place, how will that give any space in you to consider the welfare of others? Do you see what's happening here? They're all connected. They're all very much interlaced. And this is a problem because it's no longer a matter of not being altruist enough towards others, caring and loving and appreciative enough towards others, but to be insensitive towards ourselves. That's what we're dealing with. I use the term insensitive here to describe the state of chaos. Busyness is chaos in the mind. Sati is doing the opposite. It's trying to unload. It's trying to wipe out the slate, clean up the blackboard of your mind. Because so long as your mind is occupied with things, you will not see what's in front of you. You will not be able to appreciate what's happening to you. You would be simply functioning from images and memories and concepts, perceptions, sankharas, habitual drives, etc. You will not see what is happening to you. And that is at the crux of the problem, where we do not really know how to relate. Empathy doesn't exist, even though we are the generation where we use that term the most. So, what is key here is that people have to pause and really consider the wonderful opportunity we have in opening some space up for us to be in the moment. I know that sounds cliche, but it's much more than that. Because we have come to unanimously, as if agree that the normal state for the mind to be in is this chaos, is this busyness. And that is completely false. Completely false. You will not be able to love your loved one. You will not be able to hold and wrap your arms around your child, whom you love dearly, and really be there, feeling all those things. It's really impossible to really fully take that in. It's like a cup that is halfway full, or it has just a little bit of room left for you to put in a drop of something else in it, because it's already full to the brim. So business, or being busy, or busyness, is being full to the brim with the wrong stuff. You are not born to keep working, okay? You are not born to keep running after things. That's not the reason you're born. You're born to feel safety. And safety will never, ever come out of chaos. It will never come out of uncertainties. It will never come out of a state of panic or fear, fear-mongering. It will never be the result of you hurting and killing and harming or approving of somebody else doing it for you, so that you now can go and exhale a sigh of relief and you're like, finally I can now be in my safe zone. In a world where that is being promoted, or individual countries, individual people, individual governing bodies are telling their subjects basically that. In order for us to live in safety, then we have to go and crush those over there. We have come as a society to a point where we now, as grown adults, approving of such Stalinistic views. How could there be safety? The Buddha is very clear. He says, to want to have safety, to want to have comfort, to want to experience happiness for yourself and your loved ones, yet at the same time to lift a gun, a weapon, to reach for rods and weapons and swords and toss them and hit them, strike someone else with them, is an oxymoron. It doesn't work, because whichever weapon you use, whatever method that you use to strike and hurt someone else, that same method will come to you. You will never escape it. This is why the generation of people in the world today, especially those coming to Buddhism, or they keep tossing Buddhist terms here and there, one of them being kamma, or action, or even rebirth, they ignore this fact. They think, I make the rules. It's stupidity to think like that, to function like that, because the rules are rules for a reason, because they work everywhere with everyone, under all conditions. One such rule is death. Nobody's going to escape death. I don't care who it is. The Buddha himself died, Nobody escapes death. Nobody. The point is, how do you die? And how you die is completely dependent on how you have lived. And if you have been living busily, if you have been living without being present, you have not lived. You have not lived, because society has also figured out a way to convince you that being busy, pays off. It's servitude, it's slavery. In America or other places, excuse me, this machine, this system has convinced us that you go and work for 3, 4 days, 5 days, maybe 7 days in some countries. Go ahead and work, and then you'll enjoy it. And then you'll enjoy it. It's like somebody who gets flogged and beaten, like in times where, I guess even places now, where there's slavery. People get beat up, whipped, flogged, tortured. And then once the torture stops, the person goes, ah. Now that is not comfort necessarily on its own. That is simply the moment of a break. So the break can never be really sukha or happiness. Sukha is in opposite of dukkha. But today society has come to believe that moment from all the heaving and panting, running like a crazy person in a crowd, whether in Manhattan or anywhere else. It could be Tokyo, it could be Japan, it could be other places in Asia, where the moment you stop running, everybody looks at you funny and they say, oh, he's breaking our sila, he's breaking our mutual social setup contract. So keep working. No wonder there are so many suicides happening in Japan, in Asia, in other places. Because people realize that, and these are not old people, they have not been working 40, 50 years, mind you. They might be in their 20s and 30s in some cases. Why? The person realizes, however, that this is not the reason why I'm born. This is not, and I'm sorry, that carrot on a stick is not going to do it for me. Nor sending me, like in LA, people work, and then guess what happens? Especially when they hear a long weekend coming around the corner, they rush to buy tickets to or drive to Vegas. That is the norm in Los Angeles. in areas around Las Vegas, thinking that that is their way to go and vent. And this makes it normal, as it were. This is not normal at all. Because it's like putting one of those adhesives, hot patches and things when you're aching, when your joints are aching, and you put one of those hot pads or something like that with ointment and medicine, and eventually you or somebody has to pull that strip off, that almost like a Band-Aid. It's very painful. If you've ever done it, you know what I'm talking about. And then when you're doing that, you feel, So we have 52 weeks of in America, where people want to just feel like, yes, and that gives them as if the drive to go back into the hamster wheel, because that is all that we are allowed, or rather allowing ourselves. So this is also keeping us very self-centered, not in a good way. Self-serving, perhaps that's even better of a term. Self-serving. We don't feel for one another. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's what I'm trying to say. But if there is chaos in the mind, that is working along with the system of becoming indifferent, because that's what it is. It's indifference. You're living in your own world. You're not interacting. Sometimes people think, Buddhist monks, especially those who are practitioners, who really are practicing, the Patipada, living and practicing the Dhamma, the path, the Magga. When a bhikkhu does not interact, does not keep companions around, does not go and mingle with the crowds and, establish relationships and friendships and intimacies and all that there's something wrong with such a situation. Some people have even said, human beings, we are social beings. I know that. I've said that myself as a therapist, as a bhikkhu, I've said this. It's a fact, but there's more to it than that. The problem lies when we are living in a cocoon of our own making, and our own making has to do with greed, has to do with the desire to keep myself intact here in this zone. This is at the basis of narcissism, by the way. You look at world leaders, you see this. You look at people in your life, you will see this. You don't have to go far. You don't have to look into the TV screen, news, whatever, pieces, to see that. Maybe you yourself. Who knows? The problem is we don't know, because we never question. We never take a moment to see the mind, to see our behavior to situations. So you could be in a cave, you could be in a jungle, you could be in your own kuti, in your own cell, as a bhikkhu, practicing, and you are so connected with everything. I mentioned in the beginning Brahma Viharas, and I mentioned specifically mudita. You could be an embodiment, a living fountain of mudita, but no one knows that. But they feel that. So you're not isolated. You're isolated for the right reasons. You're not outside making friends and connecting this and that. We're with people, building bridges of connection, intimacy, companionships, friendships. No, that's not the purpose of the life of a bhikkhu. But nevertheless, you are very much working with the Brahma Viharas. But again, this is not about simply bhikkhus or monastics or people who have ordained who can practice this. No, lay people can and do practice, because the real world, being at that street corner in the middle of Manhattan, in the middle of that chaos, can you maintain your human beauty of connectivity? Can you? That's all about dana. That's all generosity. But it's a higher level of practice, mind you, because you're trying to live, you're trying to sustain yourself financially, your family, putting food on the table, plus all the rest of it. But here, to offer a practical segment here as to what can we do in response to this, Bhante. That's the question, right? Well, first we have to point out the problems. We have to look at the whole schema, the whole setup, and then look at it from a different perspective, and that's what I'm trying to offer, as I always try to do with these Q&As. So now that you have that bird's eye view, you can see that whether you like it or not, there's an exit. For sure, for everyone. Now that exit, as I said, is going to happen with everyone, okay. Called death, right? When we die, when we expire, we die, okay, that's an exit. But that's not the only exit. And no, you don't have to wait for Friday afternoon to come around for you to get excited about the potentiality of an exit waiting for you as you clock out, as you're driving home or something. Instead of thinking about that vacation in a few months. I know people who work with, I've had friends in the accounting world, CPAs in America, who don't have a life. A few times a year, they are, worse than hermits when you think of it, because they become top heavy with overloaded work, and it's justifiable in their mind. That means they sacrifice loved ones' time, this and that, and I'm not here to criticize anyone. People have responsibilities, and I understand that, of course. I've lived big chunks of my life drenched in responsibilities, fulfilling responsibilities, so I have an idea about that. But I'm mentioning about that exit. Keep your mind, this is the practical part of the Q&A I'm saying. Keep that in the crosshairs of your attention, of your mind, that at any moment I could die. This is not something macabre, this is not something dark that you're doing, this is not, leading to pessimism. No, not at all. In fact, it's the opposite. Because you're giving yourself another vista, you're opening the window. When there's a fire in the building, what do they say? Evacuate now in some places. Like one time I was in Sydney, and the building that I was staying at, one time in one single day, it kept on going. The sirens, for some reason, they were malfunctioning. So that whole week, it was just like, evacuate now, sometimes even at 4 a.m., 2 a.m. So, okay, what do? Evacuate now, the sirens. So that's what you're reminding yourself of. Can I evacuate now by running towards the fire exit? That's the thing that I'm trying to drive at. There is a fire exit at every moment in every experience you have. And that is called pulling yourself out from the situation instead of becoming crystallized, locked into that experience and seeing this is all there is to it. This is it, and this is all it. I am born to be in this chaotic state. I am born to work, and I have to be extremely serious in taking care of this. So you become a machine. A machine cannot feel, unlike what others are saying, or will try to say and convince us otherwise. That's not true. It's never going to be true. So there's an exit. That exit is called you bringing awareness to your body. Okay? This is the moment of sati. This is the window that you're opening in a very smoky room, and you're getting fresh air come in. Rush in. You don't have to do much. If you can do a few of these a day, you give enough room, some space for your mind to become less busy. And you're going to start to notice other things that you didn't notice before. You're going to say, was this here all the time? Yes. That's why I encourage people, if they work in an office, or even if you don't work in an office, you work at home, if you have the means, bring in something organic into your work desk. Flowers, for example. I used to, when I was a layman, once a week I would buy flowers for myself. I would go to the market at the time at Trader Joe's, and I would just go and I would buy my groceries. I would be extremely tired after having worked 50, 60-hour a week. And I would see those flowers. Orchids would be better, but they were more expensive and I couldn't afford them often. But they would last longer because they would be planted. But the others, they're just cut flowers, right? In a bouquet. So when was the last time you bought a bouquet of flowers for yourself? Get yourself a nice vase, place some water in it. It doesn't have to be, elaborate or expensive or anything. It could be a single daisy. It can be a tiny little flower. Or it could be a cactus, a mini cactus, living. And put that next to you. That's going to remind you. That's going to be your exit. That's going to allow you to use the fire exit. Fire because we're burning, the Buddha says. In the fire sermon, he was talking to 1,000 yogis. It's one of the most powerful discourses in the suttas. These were very developed yogis who had just become bhikkhus, seeing the Buddha's wisdom and power and understanding and depth of experience, because he was the embodiment of what he was teaching. That's why 1,000 yogis converted. They became Buddhist monks, ordained. And they were sitting in a beautiful place in India. It's called the Gayasisa cliff. There's a big, huge boulder jutting out from the side of a mountain. There's a flight of stairs. I don't know how many hundreds of them, but after you climb that, you go to the left, and that's there where it is. That's where they were sitting, and the Buddha gave them the fire sermon. And he says, everything is burning, bhikkhus. The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. Always craving to grab onto things. The eyes are seeking visible objects. The ears are seeking audible sounds. The nose, fragrant smells. The mouth, the tongue, delicious flavors. The body, soothing, comfortable, silky, whatever, comfortable, enjoyable touches and tactile surfaces. And the mind always is seeking beautiful objects, beautiful experience, because the mind is the processor of all that other information, right? So if everything is burning, it would be silly, stupid in fact, insane of us to run into a burning building. And that's what the Buddha is trying to say to us. Meanwhile, society is telling us, no, stick around. In fact, lock those doors. So you keep burning, like look over there. Everyone else is burning. So are you special now? All of a sudden you want to leave us? Well, either way, we're going to leave. Either way, each of us are going to leave. We don't know when. We don't know when. But before that main death comes, you can always exit while you're working, of course. I'm not saying quit the job, quit the work, the profession, the money generating, resource building endeavor, the company you built. No. Continue. But in your mind, be detached from it. Because any moment, it or you can be taken away from it. Just like anything else. It's called anicca, impermanence. Nothing is stable, the Buddha says. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is secure. Nothing that is conditioned. Nibbana is the unconditioned, and that's what we work towards. All these will guide you back to a place where Nibbana will become not just a possibility, but inevitability. If you know how to look for the fire exit and step out. And you will be protecting yourself, your loved ones. You will be holding and cuddling with your baby, with your loved one, with so much presence and warmth and love. As well as being with mudita, being with others, emotionally on that beautiful level, subtle, very present, however, life-changing connection that will show up once you are living without that extra busyness in the mind. So you know how to calm your mind down, even though you're in the chaos. And life, all of a sudden, will have a different meaning for you. Because then you will be living in the world, but not of the world. And your practice will grow so much. And you will enjoy life. You will truly taste life. You will taste happiness. Happiness that is not the result of you sacrificing chunks of your life. No, that's no longer happiness. That's not happiness. But in the midst of the workload, it's in the midst of the seeming chaos, once you're able to pull yourself out, observing it, what's happening, understanding your role, understanding that all this could be taken away, already you are protected. You're protected. Even if you're working with 400 other co-workers, you're still protected. Because you're aloof, you're watching, you're responsible, you're taking care of all your duties and responsibilities, but you're aloof, you're wiser. And that position is a powerful, courageous position, because when the moment of death comes and you have lived your life in that fashion, it really will not matter. You will not be losing anything. You're not going to be clenching and grabbing onto anything. Because you've lived fully. You've lived truthfully. You've lived genuinely. Not busily. Secured.